morning, it's February 27th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. There's a new power ranking for the most powerful people in Washington, D.C., and it should come as no surprise that President Biden is ranked at the top, as would anyone that is president. But the rest of the rankings are a little bit interesting. Coming in the second spot is the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. It's interesting that he would be number 2 because he's in the minority in the Senate. But those doing the rankings point out that he is a powerful fundraiser as well as a consummate deal maker. And he's able to control his caucus in the Republican Party better than the Republicans have been doing it in the House. At number 3 is the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. McCarthy had to undergo a grueling race to obtain the gavel and become the Speaker of the House. In getting there, he had to give away some of the power that he would normally had in this position. But once again, he's a prodigious fundraiser, and his congressional leadership fund spent over $260 million in the 22 cycle and has almost $1 million on hand going into the next election cycle. McCarthy will also control the schedule on the House floor, and McCarthy is also the key person in negotiating any deficit reduction and debt ceiling. So here's where it gets pretty interesting. Senator Joe Manchin is ranked as the 4th most powerful person in Washington. Many have called him the shadow president in the past. Senator Manchin has already taken himself out of the presidential race in 2024 and has yet to announce his intention on running for re-election from West Virginia. Manchin has met with Biden on the debt ceiling issue, and the reports are he has advised Biden not to make a major mistake by failing to negotiate with Republicans. That would put him at odds with many of his colleagues in the Democratic caucus who support the president's position of not negotiating. Number 5 in the power ranking is a pair of Republican members of Congress. Those two are James Comer from Kentucky and Jim Jordan from Ohio. Comer chairs the Oversight and Accountability Committee, and he has been constantly in the media in the early weeks of this Congress. Jim Jordan, on the other hand, is much more used to being in the media, and he will chair the Judiciary Committee in this Congress. Congressman Comer has a task of doing the investigation of the Biden family. Comer is known as a straight shooter and has even been critical of former President Donald Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He has promised to introduce legislation that would tighten the ethics laws surrounding family members of elected officials. He acknowledges that Democrats complained about Kushner's foreign dealings and thinks they have every right to, but wonders why they are mute when it comes to the Biden family and their business dealings both domestically and overseas. Jim Jordan will certainly attract a lot of media attention while chairing the Judiciary Committee. He's been an outspoken critic of the FBI and Justice Department and how they've handled some of the key investigations in the past 2 years. Jordan is concerned that political bias has become too steep within these two agencies. Coming in at number 6 is the House Freedom Caucus, and I've often referred to this as the Freedom from Governing Caucus. But with only a 5-seat majority in the House, this small group of rabble-rousers has the ability to garner more attention than would normally be attributed to them. The power player that fell the most in the rankings is Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Even though the Democrats picked up a seat in the last elections, giving them a clear majority in the Senate, Schumer will have a difficult time passing any legislation. With the House under Republican control, he can no longer use the reconciliation process to pass massive spending bills. All spending bills have to originate in the House of Representatives by rule, and that means very little will be done legislatively in the Senate. In reality, neither party will be able to pass anything of substance because even though they could pass it with a small majority in the House, that legislation will be subject to Rule 22 in the Senate, which requires 60 votes and then might fall victim to the veto pen by President Biden. Other issues for Chuck Schumer is that Democrats face an uphill climb in the 2024 elections, having to defend way more seats than Republicans, and several of them in states vulnerable to a Republican challenger. Schumer will have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars this time around. Coming in 8th place is the Senate Intelligence Committee. And I believe they get to this point in the rankings because both Chairman Mark Warner and Vice Chairman Mark Rubio have lost their patience with the Biden administration over classified document investigations and all the things it has shot out of the sky with little explanation. Both of these senators are veterans of the Senate and seem to get along with each other, and there is truly meaningful chance of having national security oversight at a time when it is sorely needed. The question is, will they be able to deliver, or will the Biden administration convince Senator Warner to back off? Hakeem Jeffries makes his first appearance in the power rankings at 9. It's not that he has much power being in a minority in the House, but he was able to get his caucus better organized than the Republicans in the early going. The true measure of his power will be his ability to raise sufficient funds to allow the Democrats to challenge Republicans in regaining control of the House. I think the key for both parties on having the majority after the next election will be who is at the top of the ticket for the Republicans. And that brings us to number 10, and that would be former President Donald Trump. Trump has a devoted following within the Republican Party, but many pundits now believe he's losing his grip. Typical of Trump, he attacks any Republican who even suggests they might run against him or even support him. We've seen him attack Florida Governor Ron DeSantis when he surged in the polls and in some cases had more support than Trump. He even felt the need to attack Nikki Haley when she announced even though she is not polling that well. All of these rankings are subject to change at any given time during the next 2 years. Should Biden eventually have to negotiate with Republicans on the debt ceiling, it would only enhance the power of Kevin McCarthy. Should Ron DeSantis announce he's running for the presidency, he could suddenly jump into the rankings as a power player in Washington, D.C. This has been To My Liberal Friends. I appreciate your listening. If you enjoy the podcast, recommend it to your friends and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for listening.